Welcome to Dodgers Dogs. As part of the Dodgers Daily Network, Casey Porter here, joined by Austin Brubaker. It is Friday night in the big town, and it is a celebration. Cool in the Gang style as Roki Sasaki is going to be a Dodger. He made up his mind today, and for all of you who are getting tired of waiting on Sasaki, that wait is over, and it was certainly worth it. What a signing, Austin. What a day. Again, the Dodgers just continue to get every free agent target that they want, right?
Yes, they seem to get every single free agent target that they're going after. And this isn't just any type of free agent target. This is one that has a whole lot of potential without the cost to get a player with this type of potential. When they went out earlier this offseason and signed a guy like a Blake Snell, that cost several years. They cost 5 years and $180 million. With Roki Sasaki, they got him with an international bonus pool money of $6.5 million, and he's going to be a Dodger for the next 6 seasons because of when he is coming over to the Dodgers. It is super exciting because all the reports coming out of Roki Sasaki is that he has the potential to be an ace-level pitcher. Now, will that happen immediately? There's going to be some sort of jump coming over to playing baseball in America, but that potential and that growth to be there for your international pool money, and there's a couple of trades the Dodgers made, which we'll get into in a little bit. The Dodgers getting Roki Sasaki, adding another high-quality arm to this rotation for the best bargain of the offseason, and perhaps one of the best bargains in recent memory, depending on how he comes over. It is super exciting day to be a Dodger. It seems like there's a lot of these exciting days to be a Dodgers right now. Roki Sasaki is a Los Angeles Dodger, and that just sounds great.
So for all the other teams that don't like the fact the Dodgers are getting all these players, and specifically Roki Sasaki, okay, this is a player that from a financial perspective, every single team in the major leagues had the ability to sign. Every single one of them. There is not one team that cannot afford Roki Sasaki. So Roki Sasaki chose the Dodgers not because of the financial, the firepower the Dodgers have. He chose the Dodgers because he feels like they have the best developmental program, that they have the best chance to give him a World Series. And then I would imagine being in LA and being with Shohei Ohtani, being with Yoshinobu Yamamoto, probably also the best endorsement type situations too. So I'm not one that's not convinced that money doesn't play an issue with this. I think if Sasaki goes to Toronto, the endorsements are what, right? I mean, how big of a star would he be in Toronto? I think the endorsement money would be quite a bit less. So when San Diego bowed out, it was no longer going to be the West Coast. I think if he is with Yu Darvish, I think the endorsement side of it could have been very lucrative for him. But once San Diego bowed out, that was pretty much a slam dunk for the Dodgers. So if you're one that's complaining about this signing about Sasaki, I don't know what to tell you if you're another team, because this is a signing that every other team could afford, and it was chosen by Sasaki for reasons other than money.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about this free agency for him is it didn't ultimately come down to the money. Yes, money was certainly part of it, and he got his fair share, and there are international free agents that the Dodgers are passing over in order to get Roki Sasaki, which I think is well worth the trade-off to go out and get him. This came down to ultimately 3 different teams, the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. And it became apparent over the past day that it was coming down to the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. And what was interesting about this is the Blue Jays actually made a trade earlier today with the Guardians to get even more international bonus pool money, which they had a leg up on the Dodgers even before that trade. What this goes to show is an organizational type win for the Dodgers, because Roki Sasaki did not choose the Dodgers because they paid him more money. He chose the Dodgers because of their organization and their track record of being able to develop players, being able to coach players really well, and surround players around them that are going to help lead to World Series championships. There are certain signings that some other organizations are not going to be in the running for. When the Dodgers paid $700 million or $325 million for Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto last offseason, there's a lot of other organizations that will not pay that type of money to go with those type of players, in which case the Dodgers are in a little bit of a separate category. This signing was a little bit different because the international pool money, every team has a certain allotment and every team's going to spend as much as they can from that specific allotment. And it was the Dodgers that ultimately won that, even with them having several other ace level pitchers, even with them having an insane amount of talent, the Dodgers were still able to attract a Roki Sasaki because of the culture that they've built, because of the organizational wins that they've had over the past couple of years. And it's taken decades in order to build this to where, from the ground up, from the foundation up, the foundation of the Dodgers right now is incredibly solid. And I think that's one of the things that Roki Sasaki probably looked at and was very appealed to coming to LA.
Was. And Sasaki is a player that one of the most attractive parts to him is that you're getting possibly one of the best pitchers in the major leagues for a minor league contract because, yes. And we'll say this again, and we're going to get into the trade with Dylan Campbell with the Phillies here in just a minute. I just posted our feature article that we just released this week on Dylan Campbell. That was pretty good timing, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. It seems like we had a couple of those during this offseason.
We've had a couple of decent timings on those, right?
Yes,
okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and then we released our interview with Dylan Campbell this week. Pretty good timing, right? So if you wanted to kind of go back and refresh yourself on who Dylan Campbell is, who the Dodgers are losing in this trade for international bonus pool money, then I put those links in there. So you're getting Roki Sasaki for not basically on a minor league contract, and so you get high level potential and you get zero risk with it, because if there is a period of time to where you need some kind of transition, and I know there's a lot of people that think that he'll never spend a day in AAA. But who doesn't ever go to AAA at some point, right? Whether it be injury or whether it be whatever it may be. So the good thing about that is that option is there, right? Mm-hmm. It's better to have and not need than need and not have. So this whole situation is just such okay, so for instance, whenever you sign like a Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's like, yeah, this is great, but man, this is expensive and it's long. So, as great as it is, there's parts of it where you go, well, here's the bad parts of it, right? When you look at this Roki Sasaki deal, there is no aspect of this that you can look at it and go, well, where's the bad part? Because there isn't any. If somebody wants to say that the international signings aren't going to be signed until 2026, okay. That's whatever. If you want to nitpick that far, but beyond that, there just is no downside to this whatsoever. It's one of the most unbelievable things. The Dodgers, between the deferrals with TeoscarHernandez, how they got him down to basically a completely fair deal. I've explained that whole thing. The deferrals with Shohei Ohtani and this entire situation. It's just amazing how this front office is playing chess, man.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And if you kind of think about this, there was a little bit of a trade-off. It was a very good trade-off for the Dodgers. You want to talk about certain international free agents that they could have signed. You want to talk about them trading away at Dylan Campbell. I believe they also made another move. I know Bruce Coons, who tweets a lot about different Dodgers prospects, mentioned that somebody from down at the very lower levels of the Dodger system, Arnado Lantigua, apparently is on the move as well, according to him. Think about those type of trades for a just about MLB ready possible ace level pitcher. And would you make that type of trade if it was offered from another organization? And every single day, the Dodgers would say yes and makes that sort of trade. And the risk with Roki Sasaki, as you mentioned, is very different from other starting pitchers. There is certain risk, albeit there's a good track record to go off of with a Blake Snell, but because he's getting older and because he's signed to well over $30 million per year, there's certain risks that come with that. With Roki Sasaki, it's basically nothing. And the Dodgers have a lot of flexibility with him as far as what they're able to do, depending on how he comes over, how ready it is, and also how the Dodgers want to strategically implement him into the starting rotation, get him acclimated to the big league level, and try to make sure that they have as many of their ace level pitchers as ready to go for October as possible. However, the Dodgers want to implement that. With Roki, they have the ability to do so, and that's the absolute amazingness part of this Roki Sasaki signing is it creates a whole bunch of different options for the Dodgers to go down with the very high ceiling that he has, which by all reports is about as high as anybody in the game of baseball.
Absolutely. So kind of explain to this, the Dodgers signed, they traded Dylan Campbell for some extra international bonus pool money. Can you kind of explain that process to us?
So with trading international bonus pool money, there's certain increments that you can go ahead and trade for. So with trading for that money, which doesn't happen all the time, but it happens occasionally, they have to be in increments of $250,000. So for example, you could trade for $250,000. You could also trade for $500,000. That's $250,000 times 2, or however much that is. I believe that with the trade with Dylan Campbell, DC, it was $750,000 or $1 million. So 250 times 3 or 4. You can't trade, for example, like $350,000. Because that's not in an increment of 250,000. So teams have the ability to go ahead and make trades for different increments of international bonus pool money in the realm of 250,000. That was what every team had the ability to be able to do. That's what we saw a little bit earlier in the day with Toronto trading for, I believe it was close to $3 million. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember how much it actually was of international bonus pool money from the Cleveland Guardians system in that trade. Those are the amount of money that you can go ahead and trade. So the Dodgers, in order to sign Roki Sasaki, which his signing ended up being for $6.5 million, one of their trades was for somebody who was on the show earlier this week, Dylan Campbell. He is an incredibly talented player, versatile, can move around the diamond quite a bit, and can do just about anything on the baseball field. Casey had a great interview with him earlier this week. Was it on Monday that you had him on the show, something like that?
Yeah.
And I got to see him all last season, which I was actually a little bit disappointed because I don't think you've ever seen him in person rooting for the team that he's actually playing for. And now you won't get the chance to do that right now.
He's not on my team again, dang it.
I know. Yeah. So I obviously wish him nothing but
looking for another punch out.
He's a really cool dude. And he's a really good baseball player and does so many things really well. Philadelphia is going to really enjoy having him.
Yeah, I'm getting the videos up on him right now. So, yeah, that's Dylan Campbell there. So the Dodgers traded this young man for international bonus pool money. Dylan Campbell's a very good player. The Phillies will absolutely love DC. DC is very, very, very good. So let's talk about next. Let's get into this right here. Okay. Again. And so now that you have Sasaki, here's another thing, Austin. They're seeing on the screen that same 40-man, 26 roster we had the other night, right? Okay. So the thing about this is that because Roki Sasaki is a minor leaguer, the Dodgers technically don't have to put him on the 40-man roster for really the next 6 years, right? Okay. Yeah. And then once they put him on the 40-man roster, then he will have 3 option years. So that's the incredible flexibility that comes with even a guy that's with as much talent as he has. Now, I think we all know that that's not going to ever really kind of come into the equation because I think most people are thinking that Sasaki will be in the major leagues from day one. Now, I'm not convinced on that. He's not Yamamoto. He's leaving 2 years earlier than Yoshinobu Yamamoto, so we'll see. And there is a lot of competition. So right now, the question is, what does the roster look like? So putting Sasaki on this actually completes the 40-man roster. You are at 40. So at this point, if you put Sasaki on the 40-man, but they won't. So you're going to stay at 39 until you decide when you want to put Sasaki on there or whatever. So the significance of that is if you wanted to go get a Tanner Scott right here, I'm highlighting it for him, then he could still be your 40th guy on your roster spot. You still have that one spot open, and then you could wait to put Roki Sasaki on the 40-man until your 60-day ILs go on the IL. That's how you could clear the 40-man. Same with Clayton Kershaw. But here is your problem, okay? Remember we mentioned the other night that you're going to get 14 pitchers because Shohei Ohtani, being a two-way player, is a – let me go ahead and put the virtual camera on here, Austin. Let me flip it over so you can see this. Might as well. Won't take me a second. There you go. Okay, so because Ohtani's a two-way player, the Dodgers now get that 14th pitcher, which makes it make sense to have a six-man rotation because you get to keep the 8 bullpen arms. So now if you put Roki Sasaki on the 26-man roster, so if you're one who thinks that Roki Sasaki will never spend a day in the minor leagues, then at that point you have 13 pitchers on your 26-man roster. So if you go get Tanner Scott, okay, now you have all 14 on your roster, and you have no position there to make any kind of moves at the AAA level, okay? And so I noticed that today that the MLB Network, they penciled in Tony Gonsolin as the number 6 starter. We'll see. That would move Dustin May to the pen. So if you're one who still wants the Dodgers to go get Tanner Scott, and then you're assuming they're also going to get Clayton Kershaw, that puts you at 15. You're one over. So the only person on this list right here that has minor league options are Roki Sasaki and Tony Gonsolin. So you're either going to option one of these two, or you're going to trade one of these other guys to make that room for that last spot. And then even at that doesn't leave you an up-down position. So let's say that you sent Tony Gonsolin down, right? Okay, so now that puts you back at 14 with no up-down spot. You have no ability to bring Tony Gonsolin back up to the major leagues because you don't have that 14th spot available as that up-down spot. Does that make sense to you? So if you want Tanner Scott and Clayton Kershaw, then at that point, you are telling me that you're okay with the Dodgers trading somebody like this, or you're okay with Tony Gonsolin or Roki Sasaki being in the minor leagues without any ability to be able to be brought back up. Those are the only two options from a mathematical perspective. Austin, can you hear me? Austin, can you hear me? I don't think Austin can hear me. Austin, are you with me? Well, Austin's not hearing me right now, so I don't know what's going on. He may have to log off and log back on. So just kind of doing the math.
I'm back now.
Okay,
sorry.
yeah. So how much of that did you hear, Austin?
I heard a good majority of that. Sorry, I had somebody else connect headphones in, so my ears went out right there.
Yeah.
So here's where I'm at with the roster and the pitching side right now. As far as different sort of pitching options that they have going forward, let's see if I can pull my screen up. All right, so I'm just thinking about opening day. Who's going to be ready, and how can we add a little bit of flexibility? So I'm under the assumption, and I'll give it the assumption, that Roki Sasaki, let's say that he starts the season at the big league level with the Dodgers, which I think would be most people's expectations of him. Now, whether that will happen in reality or not, we'll see how he's able to adapt and comes over, and what the Dodgers plan to keep these arms as healthy as possible. I think that might be the biggest factor with it. So I would see opening day right now, assuming that a lot of these guys are healthy. I'm penciling in 11 different guys right now that you want sent down. And I'll talk about some of the other guys that are on this list in just a little bit.
Who are they? Can you give me the names? I'll highlight them.
Yes, the 11 names that I'm talking about. Let's start with the starting rotation. I currently have Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, and Tony Gonsolin. Those are 5 that I have in there penciled in right now, assuming that they come into spring training ready to go. So that's 5 different pitchers that you have. All of them would be starting pitchers. In the bullpen, you have Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, Anthony Banda, Ryan Brazier, and Alex Vesia. Those are 6 different arms that you have out of the bullpen. Vesia actually technically does have a minor league option. Same with Gonsolin and Sasaki. But if they're healthy, they're going to be on the big league roster if at all possible.
Right.
Those are the 11 that I feel confident at this point right now that are the most likely to be healthy going into the start of the season, which would leave 2 different roster spots. Now, where this gets a little bit complicated is with a guy like a Dustin May. I think there's a lot of question about Dustin May's health because there always seems to be question about Dustin May and what he's going to be able to provide. Will that be from a starting pitcher role? Will that be from a bullpen role? We don't really know. He is in his last year of arbitration, which means he's going to be a free agent next year. It also means that he does not have any minor league options. So it's a big question. And Dustin May has all the capabilities in the world of being a really effective arm coming out of the rotation, coming out of the bullpen. His stuff is absolutely wicked. If he is healthy, ready to go at the start of the season, that makes it 12. I don't think, and it's been reported that Shohei Ohtani will not be ready for the start of the season, which means you're going to have 13 different pitchers. I always just think of Shohei Ohtani as as an extra arm that you can go ahead and throw out there. And then with Clayton Kershaw, I don't think he's going to be ready for the start of the season as well. So with those guys, I think that Dustin May is the only one where I have a little bit of question as far as where his health is, which if he's on the start of the season, that only leaves you with one spot, in which is you have a guy that can move up and down that would be ready to go at the start of the season. And then that just doesn't leave you with a whole lot of room to be flexible with guys to add on.
And then when Ohtani gets back in May, that leaves you with no spots whatsoever. Then when you add Kershaw, that leaves you one spot over. So I think with the plan right now for the Dodgers appears to be play it by ear. We'll wait and see. We've got it covered for like the first part of the season until Ohtani. So they have the number situation covered until Ohtani gets healthy, right? But then once Ohtani gets healthy, then that's when it really starts getting just really, really, really difficult. Now, you also, I'll tell you in that equation, Austin, what you also didn't do is you also didn't add a Tanner Scott to that. So if you add a Tanner Scott to that, then your numbers are, what I'm trying to say is, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, okay? But like right now with Roki Sasaki, there was nothing to lose with this. You get a minor league player, you get major league return, possibly top echelon major league return, and you still have the spots available to keep adding on your roster. You still could have an up-down spot right now, even with the Roki Sasaki. I mean, you could do it with him if you wanted to, right? But now, so if you go get Tanner Scott, it's a totally different situation. There's a lot of cost to Tanner Scott beyond just his contract, and that cost is going to be, who do you get rid of? The cost is going to be you don't have a roster spot available for any of your AAA up-down guys, and you don't have a roster spot available for Clayton Kershaw. So there is a lot of cost coming if you go get a Tanner Scott at this point.
So then that brings up the question going forward, because the Dodgers did their next big thing that they wanted to do. They wanted to go out and get a Roki Sasaki. And I think there's still probably a good indication that they're probably going to be looking for some type of back-end bullpen piece and then try to figure out some of the puzzles. I think, as you had mentioned, in order to make that work, somebody that is currently projected to be on the roster, if you want any sort of flexibility, if you want to make sure that the bullpen arms, that the starting pitcher arms, you're not waiting for them to be injured in order to call somebody up, or be extremely creative with some sort of phantom IL, which could be a possibility. If you're not waiting for an injury, there would have to be some other move that would have to take place, in which case that becomes a really fascinating question as far as what they look to do as far as arms that they could potentially move in order to fill in and create a spot on the 26-man roster for a Tanner Scott so that they can have some of these other arms come in. Because I think the biggest concern for Dodgers fans and the thing that they're worried about the most is making sure these arms are healthy when October happens. And if they are relied upon for all of the innings 162, they will not be healthy going into October, or not as healthy and ready to go as they need to be, because they were coming off of a full postseason, in which case they had to go and pitch a lot of innings, and now they would be pitching a full 162. So some additional move has to happen. I'm fascinated if they go out and try to get a Tanner Scott, which one of his potential destinations, the New York Mets, did make a signing for a left-handed reliever not named Tanner Scott. So that could eliminate some of the teams. Perhaps the Dodgers are waiting for the price to go down. And if that is the case, perhaps they look to trade some of the either bullpen pieces or maybe even a guy like a Dustin May off of their roster.
Yeah. So CNAV is saying the up-down Rolodex spot is called the 60-day IL. Definitely the sacrificial roster. Yes, so if you eliminate Clayton Kershaw, so that puts you at 14, even when Ohtani gets back, which is going to be mid-May. So at that point, you only get 14 pitchers, as it says right here, okay? And so at that point, actually, let me go. Click that back over. Okay, so if you go get Tanner Scott before Clayton Kershaw gets healthy, you have the numbers to figure out how to get all of them on the 26-man roster. So what Christopher Navarro is saying is that the 60-day IL takes care of that. And the 60-day IL is for the 40-man roster, not the 26. That does not help you with your active roster. That helps you with your 40-man roster and all the guys that are available on that. That's still so that helps the numbers for down here. The 60-day IL does, but that does not help your numbers for up here. And if you do 60-day IL somebody, who's that going to be up here? The cost is you're still losing one of these pitchers that you wanted to be on your 26-man roster to make that happen. So I guess what he's saying is that when Clayton Kershaw comes back, then Tony Gonsolin goes on the 60-day IL. Well, then you don't have Tony Gonsolin, so that's the cost of that, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is, at this point, the Sasaki signing with no Scott, no Kershaw to this point, we think Kershaw is going to come back. The Sasaki signing, there was no risk because it puts you at 13 out of your 14 that you're going to have available, right? The Tanner Scott signing comes with a heavy cost because it completely plugs up your entire 26-man roster. So that's where the Tanner Scott deal is going to get interesting. All that means is, and we'll move on from the Tanner Scott thing here in a second. All that means is when Tanner Scott already wants an overpay to begin with in his contract, and then whenever he's going to plug up so many problems on this 26-man roster from just trying to figure out who's on it, the Dodgers are really, 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 really going to have to want Tanner Scott, right?
Yes.
More so than just going and getting a free agent.
And it's not just the 26-man roster complication, which very much complicates it unless you make an additional move on top of that. You also talk about the financial aspect of signing a Tanner Scott. The Dodgers are already well over the highest luxury tax, which means they will be paying 110% tax on every single dollar that they spend in free agency on top of that. So signing a Tanner Scott, let's say that they sign him to a shorter term deal with higher AAV, which for a lot of their signings, or especially with those that have a lot of ups and downs like the bullpen seems to have, those are the type of deals that the Dodgers typically like. They would be paying basically double that, whatever they would be paying him. And that is a very high price to pay for a reliever, even a reliever as good as a Tanner Scott, if it adds additional complications on top of it. So I still looking for the Dodgers to potentially go out and get a high leverage reliever, but they have to like that high leverage reliever better than a Ryan Brazier, better than an Anthony Bonda, better than a Dustin May, because they likely, if they want to have any sort of flexibility, would have to trade one of those guys from their bullpen or somebody else in the bullpen is already dealing with injuries, and we just don't know what's going on. They're already dealing with stuff like that. That could be something that's a little bit of an X factor. I'm assuming that all of these guys are healthy, and if they are all healthy, there's a lot of complicating factors on this roster.
So, needless to say, we've been saying this all off season. The Dodgers are going backwards at this, and what I mean is usually you kind of look at what we're saying and say, well, you got 2 spots left, so we can only get this guy, we can only get that guy, we can't afford. So the Dodgers aren't doing it that way. The way they're doing it is, this is who we want. We don't care how the math works. And then after we get who we want, like you said just a minute ago, then we'll try to figure out the puzzle from there based on what we have to do. But they are going and getting who they want, caution to the wind, figure out the roster later. So it's not what I want to say. It's reckless, but I will say it's very, very, very aggressive, and it's a lot of fun to watch, and it's fascinating because you're just looking at these numbers, just going, okay, well, where are they headed next, and what's going on here, and what's going on there. So, right now, I think if you do to get Tanner Scott, like you said, somebody on this list, I think maybe an Anthony Bonda or Ryan. Of course, Anthony Bonda is so cheap now; it's just unbelievable. Yeah, I think I say it again. I think Vesia, or not Vesia, but Brazier and Bonda are your 2 biggest candidates. So basically, you'd be trading Tanner Scott for one of those 2, and I think Dodgers fans would do that every day and twice on Sundays.
It depends on the exact role, and I agree with those 2 names that are strictly out of the bullpen. Those would be the 2 likely names. Those are the 2 that are Correct. A little bit lower on the high leverage type. A lot of the high leverage innings are going to go to Kopech, Trinan, and Phillips, and Vesia as well. So they would be 5 and 6 on the high leverage innings. I'm almost starting to wonder if Dustin May is part of this conversation because he does not have any minor league options. There's not a whole lot of flexibility that he has going up and down. That could be another guy that they look to and turn to and say, we just don't have a whole lot of room. There's a lot of questions and uncertainty, and they don't know how many innings he's going to provide the Dodgers during this upcoming season, in which case he would be a free agent next year and they won't get any value out of him. He could be that 3rd guy that they potentially look to as far as a trade and trying to get some sort of value to create a roster spot for a Tanner Scott. Right now, they have room, I think, for a Dustin May, and he could be a really valuable piece coming out of this bullpen when he is healthy. But is now the time, if they have to make some sort of move to bring somebody in, which I think both you and I agree, in order to keep this roster as healthy as it possibly can with the numbers that are adding up right now, they have to make a move to make sure this roster stays healthy because the guys out of the bullpen, they don't have any sort of length. They need that bulk inning type reliever still on there. He could be very much a realistic possibility for the Dodgers to potentially look at trading in order to free up some space on this roster. You could mention maybe a Tony Gonsolin, but the good thing about him, he does have a minor league option, and I have a lot more confidence in him providing additional innings to the staff than I do with a Dustin May. So that's why I would bring him up as a possibility.
Wow. Why is that? I mean, Gonsolin's been as injured as May.
Just looking at, if you look at the past couple of years for Dustin May and his innings, which I was doing a little bit of this, perhaps talk about this in some of my past shows. Let's go since 2021, major league innings for Dustin May. 2024 was injured. 2023 pitched 48 innings at the major league level. 2022, 30 innings. In 2021, 23 innings. That's Dustin May's innings over the past several years. Tony Gonsolin did not pitch last year, but pitched 103 in 2023, 130 in 2022, and 55 in 2021. So even though he's dealt with a whole lot of injuries, he has at least double the amount of innings over the past several years than a Dustin May has had. So that's why I have a little bit more confidence in a Tony Gonsolin than a Dustin May, at least being able to provide innings, which I think has some value for this organization.
Yeah, and they're looking at Tony Gonsolin right there and his innings there. So I think if you want Tanner Scott, Clayton Kershaw, both, and you get Shohei Ohtani back, I think you're still going to want that up-down spot to get back to 13. I think there's a good chance between Dustin May, Ryan Brazier, and Anthony Bonda. I think there's a good chance that 2 of them are gone. right?
Yeah.
Because that gives you the flexibility you need.
Yeah, and I don't think that has to be two of them gone immediately. With
Correct.
Clayton Kershaw, you can wait to see throughout the course of the season. And if everything goes right and everyone's healthy, then you can make this move a little bit closer to the trade deadline or whenever closer to when Clayton Kershaw is going to be ready to go, healthy to go. You don't have to move two of these guys immediately right away. If everything goes right, everybody is healthy, that likely is a move that they're going to have to make. So then they have that added flexibility for the later part of the seasons. Right now, I think if they wanted to add in a high leverage reliever to prevent clogging up the roster, unless somebody is already injured, or they possibly could wait until the end of spring training and say, hey, we're just going to see what happens. We're going to keep as many of these guys as we possibly can. And if it happens that everybody's all healthy, ready to go, now's the time to go ahead and make a move. That could be something that they look into as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the Dodgers, I mean, at this point, you're playing it day by day. You have so much talent that you don't have enough baseballs to go around. It's like a basketball team. There's not enough basketballs. Like receivers and running backs on a football team. You know, whenever you have like 4 really good receivers and 2 really good running backs, the quarterback's constantly trying to keep everybody happy, right? Because there's not enough footballs to go around. That's the situation the Dodgers are in. And really the way that you handle that is, A, who has the hot hand at the moment, and B, you kind of see who's injured. If you have, even a slight, if you're slightly not 100%, somebody else is in, right? Because you have the ability to do that and you have so much depth. And so here are the rest of the guys. Let's say that Kershaw, Sasaki, and Scott. Scott will obviously be, he has not been signed yet. So here are the other guys that we're talking about that really kind of, to be honest with you, at this point, the way that this is shaping up via injury, they're kind of crap out of luck, right? I mean, they just really are. I mean, and that hurts my soul to say because you guys know how much I love Big Ben, man. I've talked to Ben beyond just our interviews. Talked to him so many different times just in the dugout for like 30 minutes. He's such a great dude. Robo, I think that speaks for itself if you watch any of our interviews as far as my admiration for him. Landon Knack, that's the same thing. I mean, I've just been following him forever. I've talked to Landon 50 times probably. Same with the Maytag. I'm not as familiar with Bobby Miller. He's always had that higher profile, so I've always left him alone a little bit more. And he's always been kind of a little bit more guarded from that perspective, and I don't blame him. And Michael Grove's another guy that I've been following all the way back since his freshman year of college at West Virginia when he shoved against OU at the Brickdown Ballpark in the Big 12 tournament. So I'm just in deep with Michael Grove. From Michael Grove, Jack Dreyer, Landon Knack, Justin Robleski, Ben Kasparis, I'm in deep on a personal level with these guys, rooting for them. So when I say these guys are just kind of crap out of luck, the way it looks at this moment, without injuries, that hurts my soul. I hate saying that. I wish they had better opportunities somewhere else, but that's the price you pay whenever you're trying to create a dynasty roster that's trying to win 5 or 6 world championships. And I'll say this again, Austin. We've said this. We said it during the playoffs. If the Dodgers win the World Series this year, meaning last year, 2024, watch out because this is going to be the least talented roster they are going to have for the foreseeable future, and that has turned out to be the case.
You look at every single one of those guys on the list, and there is arguments that can be had that every single one of those guys deserves a lot of playing time at the big league level during the 2025 season. And there's arguments that they could be and arguably should be on the big league roster for the start of the 2025 season. But because of the limitations that the Dodgers have, most of them, and there's even a chance that all of them start the season in Oklahoma City. And that sucks for each one of those guys. You even heard it in the interview that premiered yesterday with Justin Robleski, about him going out there and getting acclimated to the big league level. And when it just feels like he's starting to get on a roll, get sent back down and trying to make that with that adjustment. This is something that's unfortunately needed for a lot of organizations because of the way the 40-man roster is constructed and the way that minor league options work. You need to have guys in your system that do have minor league options. And with the Dodgers continuing to go out there and try to sign as many of these high leverage, high impact big league free agents as possible, that does have an impact on some really talented guys that I think if they got significant playing time at the big league level could acclimate really well and really start to grow into big league players. So that could be a price that is paid by the Dodgers if they don't end up moving some of these guys. Now, they need to keep in mind that they need to have some depth, and the guys that they have right here, they'll need to, if they go ahead and trade some of these guys, get some guys that can provide additional innings if needed throughout the course of the season, because we saw the Dodgers go through 40 different pitchers through the course of the season. But it looks like, at least at this point, which I hope that there is at least one or two roster spots. It's looking like there's probably going to be one roster spot that these guys are fighting for, that there's at least one spot that they can go and fight for and try to earn through the course of spring training. Whether Bobby Miller comes in and emerges onto the scene like he did a couple of years ago, whether Landon Knack, who was pitched really well through the course of the 2024 season and provided some crucial innings when the Dodgers needed to, including during the postseason, that helped save some of the bullpen. He was one of those key pieces in the starting rotation last year that got them through the season. Ben Casparis, who I know Dodgers fans were so happy and thrilled of what he was able to do. Michael Grove, who I think some of the underlying metrics are a little bit underrated for a Michael Grove. He's part of theirs. And Edgardo Henriquez, who is a flamethrower. Jack Dreyer, who's coming up, who, if you don't know who he is special in what he's able to do. One of the, if not the best reliever in minor league baseball last year, one of the best. And then Justin Robles, who you got to hear from yesterday. All of these guys deserve opportunities. It's going to be, at least from the outset, seemingly very limited. And it sucks. And even if you add the guys on the other guys on the 60-day injured list or who have been injured, Nick Frasso could be a possibility. And then other guys will be ready to go possibly during the 2026 season with a Kyle Hurt, River Ryan, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone. There are a lot of talented arms within the system. How do they fit and find room to get these guys to develop and be able to grow as big league pitchers? It's going to be very tough to see how they do that.
Yeah. So we have kind of a cool trade proposal here from Hep C. This is interesting. So the trade proposal here is Brazier, Grove, Outman, Fiducia. So them gone to make room for Sasaki, Kike, Scott, and Kershaw. So I have them all on this roster here. So let's remove Ryan Brazier, okay? So that puts you at exactly 14, okay? Because you see 15 here, remove Brazier. That puts you at 14. That leaves you with no up-down whatsoever for your pitchers. Not one up-down. Once Ohtani and Kershaw get healthy. We're talking futuristic here, like in the hopes that everybody gets healthy and you have everybody available. That leaves you with no up-down options for your pitcher side. On the position player side, if you add Kike, at that point that leaves you one spot for James Outman, Hae-Sung Kim, and Andy Pages, which means that two of these three guys are just not going to get any kind of run whatsoever. So at that point, really, if you add Kike and these guys, you have no up down on the pitcher side, only one up down option on the position player side, and you have three guys that all need that spot available to them at that point. And that does not even include, like, of course, you'd be getting rid of Hunter Fiducia and guys like that. So if you made that trade, boy, you'd be running it very thin, and you would be timing out likely James Outman and Andy Pages both. Because I don't see Hae-Sung Kim being a guy that's not on the 26-man roster at some point, right?
Yeah, if he doesn't start the season at the 26-man roster, then that if you add in Kike Hernandez and you don't move off of Chris Taylor, that means Andy Pages is starting the season at the minor league level, and he has no minor league options, and his value tanks immediately. So it's fun thinking about these different type of trades, and I appreciate that, especially guys that might not be getting as much opportunities, trying to find a different way to get them different opportunities or moving off of guys. Right now, one of the tough parts for the Dodgers is if they want to add players specifically to the 26-man roster, how do they create room on that 26-man roster. I think fans are in the mindset of thinking, how do we create room on the 40-man roster?
That's what I'm trying to get them pivoted to. Yes.
Yeah, and what you need to think of is, what is the replacement? Who could Tanner Scott potentially replace of the players that are on the major league roster? And perhaps that, as mentioned, and that could be for a Ryan Brazier. You replace a Tanner Scott for a Ryan Brazier. Okay, that still leaves an opening for somebody to come up and down, especially if it doesn't include, if you don't sign, or Kershaw's not ready to go for the start of the season. That can leave a little bit of flexibility right there. So that could be a potential option. Just thinking about trading all the guys that are not on the 26-man roster for guys that are going to add on to the 26-man roster, that's going to complicate things too quickly.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. And hey, that math is possible. I'm not saying that's not possible.
Yeah.
If that's the way the Dodgers want to go, then that math is there for you. Here's all I'm saying. Think back to the past, right? Okay. When have you ever known the Dodgers not to keep one pitcher spot available for AAA guys to come up and down? When have they never had that spot available? Ever? Can you think of a time ever where that, like for one day, on their 26-man roster that wasn't set aside for the up-down train? Have they ever? Can you ever even think of that scenario where it's ever even happened?
I can't think of that, or for a guy that they're planning on designating for assignment later in order to provide some innings, because there's going to be stretches where there's 12, 13 days in a row where they have games. And if one starter doesn't do well, if Tyler Glasnow only is able to provide you 3 innings, okay, then you got to use basically all of your bullpen arms. And then they have to be ready to go for the next day and the next several days, in which case you would have no flexibility to bring guys up and down unless somebody gets injured through the course of that, which is why they need that extra roster spot in order to keep some flexibility there.
Yeah, so the IL list, okay, so for baseball had a 10-day injured list throughout its history, but they brought back the 15-day IL list for pitchers. So if you might be thinking, okay, well, you can just manipulate the IL. That's 15 freaking days, man. I mean, that's what, 2 starts for Tony Gonsolin?
Yeah, that'd be something like that.
For like a Tyler Glasnow? Yeah.
And another thing to keep in mind is also the number of minor league options that you can have, or number of times that you can send guys up and down throughout the course of the year. I believe you can only send guys up and down 5 different times throughout the course of the year, which means the time that they're going to be at the big league roster, you have to maximize that and either have a large quantity that can move up and down, in which case you can move guys pretty frequently right there, or you have to be mindful of how you use those up and downs, which means that you can't call up a Landon Knack for his start, send him immediately back down, call up a Bobby Miller for the next start, and then later in the week do the exact same thing for Landon Knack and Bobby Miller. Won't look like that work like that, because then they'll run out of times that they can move up and down throughout the system over the course of the year. So you have to be mindful of that, and creating a little bit more flexibility is very much needed for this Dodgers team to keep these arms as healthy as possible. And that is what I'm going to preach, because that's what all Dodgers fans want and what we want. We don't want this roster spot just because it's going to the minor league guys, although they have earned it and we want them to get more opportunities. Part of the argument for it is we want the Dodgers the arms that they're relying upon, to be healthy for October. And if they're relied upon for the entirety of 162, all of those innings, there's an increased chance that there's going to be more injuries throughout the course of the season, and they might not be healthy, ready to go in October.
What's the one thing that's derailed the Dodgers the most in terms of pitching in the last 4 or 5 years?
I mean, they seem to lose a lot of different starters over the course of the past couple of seasons because they've gotten injured.
Okay. So your only kryptonite you've had has been injury, correct?
Yeah.
And so your answer to that is to not leave an up-down train for your minor league guys to come up to give your major league pitchers the day off? I mean, do you see where I'm coming at with this?
Yeah.
I mean, are you following what I'm saying? That doesn't add up in my head to where you say, literally the only way that this team can lose is if our starting pitching goes down and they're not healthy, but yet we're going to pin them in to where they don't get any time off because we don't have that 14th spot to bring up a fresh arm from AAA. That just does not make any sense, because that literally, if you do that and you clog up all 14 spots, you don't leave that 14 spot available for Landon Knack, Bobby Miller, Michael Grove, Edgardo Henriquez, Jack Dreyer, Landon Knack, Ben Kasparius, whoever it may be. If you don't leave that 14 spot available, that means, like you said, every one of your starting pitchers has to make every single one of their starts. And if they don't, you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point. So, yeah, you bring somebody on your 26-man roster maybe to cover a bullpen start, but that still means you're taxing the same bullpen guys, right? You're not bringing up a fresh arm. So the only way that this team can lose is if they get injured. And the quickest way to get injured is to pin yourself into a situation to where you don't have a spot to bring somebody up as a fresh arm. And again, 15-day IL is a long time. I mean, that's a couple of different starts. And if you do that, let's say that each one of these starting pitchers, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu, let's say your starting 6 pitchers all go on the 15-day IL, right? So that's 2 starts apiece. So that's 12 starts a year, right? I mean, that's pretty significant. So versus bringing up a fresh arm and that kind of thing. So we'll see how it goes, but just kind of playing both sides. Let me finish this. I know you have something to say here. By bringing this back to full circle, the signing with Roki Sasaki had none of this risk to it, because you're still at 13. You still have your 14th spot to bring up all of your minor leaguers. You're still in great shape in terms of your numbers until you sign Clayton Kershaw. Then it gets kind of sticky until Ohtani, and especially until Ohtani gets back, you're in great shape. The signing that all of this talk we're having about right now is trying to go get Tanner Scott. But the Sasaki deal, there was none of this risk tagged to it.
No, not at all. Roki Sasaki was an amazing signing for the Dodgers, because even if he's not ready to go for the start of the season, he has the ability to start at the minor league level. I'm not predicting that. I'm not anticipating that, but the Dodgers have that flexibility where they don't have that flexibility for many other players on this roster. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach it. The Dodgers know that is the biggest hurdle that they have to overcome, is the injuries that occur, which a lot of this is random. A lot of this has to do with the type of pitchers that the Dodgers target, which is those high stuff, high velo guys. And when you have a bunch of those guys, I think there's probably a higher risk of those guys going down and getting injured. And unfortunately, that has bit the Dodgers and a lot of these very talented arms quite a bit over the past couple of years. They could be healthy through the course of the season. They could be creative on how they space out some of their injuries or how they space out some of their IL stints to make it work. There are certainly creative ways that you can go about this. But right now, if they add in a Tanner Scott, there's not an easy way to go about this. If you want to go and say, hey, we're going to wait until somebody gets injured, that's not a great strategy to go about it. I'm sure the Dodgers have thought of this. I'm sure they're smarter. They're way smarter than either of us or anybody that's tuning in right now, because they've built in dynasty, and that or is on the precipice of building a dynasty. And that is amazing to be able to witness. The Dodgers do a great job. We have a great community here at Dodgers Dogs. Just super fun to be a part of.
Or I'll give you an alternative universe. They haven't thought of any of this, and they've said, we'll think of it later. We're getting Roki Sasaki first, and we'll figure out everything later. It could be that too, right?
Yeah, it could be. In which case, it's a very good alternative go down. Okay, we got this great pitcher that could be an ace-level pitcher. Now what? Okay, we got to figure out some other moves in order to make this work. And I think this has to be something that they've thought of before. But all of their effort has been working on trying to pitch and try to get Roki Sasaki to join the Dodgers. And now that he has, they can think about all these alternative aspects as far as, okay, how do we actually make the pieces work? What can we actually do to make this roster as good as we possibly can, and try to capitalize on all the value that we have, because the value of the Dodgers right now, not just monetary wise, but as far as the production and promise of a lot of these players is incredibly high.
Hey, we have 2 super chats from Matt Kramer. We have a $19.99 and a $9.99. Matt says, I feel like we're all on a kind of a sugar high right now. When is it all too much? How will we all feel if it doesn't work to perfection? odds are against winning World Series no matter what we do. So what's going to happen is exactly what happens every year. The Dodgers are going to nitpick this team. They're going to lose like to the Padres, not the Padres, but they're going to lose like a game to the Rockies, and like Dodgers fans are going to massively overreact. And that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun because you know what? We're fans and we get to do that, right? None of us are Dave Roberts. None of us are Andrew Freeman. None of us are Brandon Gomes. None of us are Billy Gasparino. So by God, when the Dodgers lose and they play like absolute hot garbage and they lose to one of the worst teams in the major leagues, I'm going to get my ass on Dodgers Dogs the next day, and I'm going to bitch to no end about it. And then the next day when we win, I'm going to celebrate like crazy, right? And we're going to do that for 162 games, right?
Oh,
and have a hell of a good time.
I can't wait for it, man. I can't wait for the season to start. On paper, the Dodgers have the best roster in baseball, but on paper does not always win. They have to go and actually perform on the field. And so how they actually perform on the field is going to determine how we actually feel about all these different signings, all these different trades, all these different moves that the Dodgers are making. It's going to be determined by on the field, which is very fastly. We're about a month away from the first spring training game, which I don't think I mentioned it on one of the shows that I'll be on. I'll actually be at the first spring training game that the Dodgers are going to.
Oh man!
I know. I got surprised at Christmas. My dad and I are going to be headed down there, so it's going to be super fun to spend a couple days out in Arizona. So it's going to be super fun.
Yeah. So I'm kind of giggling about, I said that alternate universe could be, hey, I don't care about any of this. I care about going and get Sasaki. We'll figure out everything else after that, right?
Yeah.
Just go get Sasaki. I giggle because it reminds me of Bobby Knight. And I've said this story, I think, a couple of times already on Dodgers Dogs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network, but it's worth repeating as many times you can. I believe it's 1982, maybe 1983. So it's the year that Michael Jordan's coming out, right, of North Carolina. And Portland has the first pick in the NBA draft. And they call Bobby Knight and they say, hey, Bobby, what do you think about Michael Jordan? And Bobby Knight goes, what the hell are you talking about? Take him. And they're like, well, we need a center. And they said, then play him at center. All I can tell you is you need to take Michael Jordan. Well, the Trailblazers took Sam Bowie instead, and now look what happened with Michael Jordan, right? So that reminds me of this whole situation, like signing all these guys. Well, what if this? What if that? What about the roster? What about that? All I'm telling you is go sign Roki Sasaki and figure out where to play him or how everything works afterwards. It's that same situation, and it makes me giggle. I love it so what the Dodgers are doing, they're taking Michael Jordan, right? They're not taking Sam Bowie because they needed a center. They are taking they're taking Michael Jordan, and they're figuring out how they deal with the center position later, right? And it's just a super aggressive, super fun, celebratory way of this front office. We said it all the way back to our Billy Gasparino conversation. He said point blank in that interview, this ownership group is as hungry as ever for more championships. He said they were going to be aggressive, and they have absolutely been that. So Dodgers fans should just thank their stars for this wonderful owner group until they pay $43 to park and they pay $26 for a hot dog. I joke a little bit at that point, but this is absolutely a celebration.
It's very much a celebration. That was absolutely perfect, Casey, and that's absolutely right. You're getting that type of player, or a player with that much promise for the price of international bonus pool money. It's not a lot to go get this for 6 years of Roki Sasaki. It's absolutely incredible to see this happen, to see this work out, and the Dodgers will pick up the pieces and try to figure out how to make this work. But they had an incredible talent, and if it turns out they have a lot of talent for starting pitchers, but they don't have to keep necessarily all of that. They do have the avenue to where they could trade some of these guys if that's what the Dodgers decide to do. They do have an avenue of keeping as much depth to get through the full 162. That's a lot of different options and possibilities that the Dodgers have. And then Roki Sasaki is a phenomenal option for the Dodgers to have. And now he's with the organization for the next half decade.
So let me throw you another chess piece to this front office, okay? So we have some longer contracts, some aging players. this is a conversation we've had forever. The Dodgers need to get younger, or they need to use this guy or that guy because they have longer. You don't want to sign everybody to a long contract, this and that. We've talked about that ad nauseum, right? This is another chess piece that's going completely unnoticed about this front office, okay? So what's going to happen is maybe we're talking about it right now. Ryan Brazier, Anthony Bonda. Well, every single team in the major leagues would kill to have Anthony Bonda right now. You know why? Because he's freaking cheap and he has great experience for how cheap his contract is. So not only have the Dodgers went and got Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Roki Sasaki, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I'm losing track of all these guys. Okay. They also have a bunch of contracts on their payroll that other now Chris Taylor is probably the wart that you would say nobody would take on, right? It's such an oddity for the Dodgers to make such a bad deal. It's like, wow, where the hell did that come from? Of course, it comes from the nostalgia of what Chris Taylor has, the legacy of what he's done for this organization. So we understand that. But not only have they went and got all these high-profile guys to put the Dodgers in a position to win 5 or 6 world championships, they also have multiple guys on the roster that other teams would take on their contracts. And so they have the flexibility to get rid of guys if they need to create room on their 26-man roster. You have to have that side of it covered too, and the Dodgers definitely have that.
It comes down to attention of detail to all of the small aspects of the game. This operation doesn't just work by throwing tons of money at players. Certainly that does help, and certainly that gets you a lot of great talent. But if you want to have sustained success, each part of the element of the organization, the development, going out and getting a player like an Anthony Bonda, who I believe was one of those guys that they brought in, and if it didn't work out for him, they would have just moved on, just like they've moved on from a lot of other different relievers. It worked out for him, just like it's worked out for a lot of different guys out of the bullpen. And Alex Vesia and Evan Phillips, a lot of these guys, they've worked on and developed and got them to a place where they've become really effective relievers. And that comes down to attention of detail. That comes down to coaching and development, which the Dodgers do a really good job at, which creates different opportunities that you can leverage to get additional talent. It also creates opportunities where you can trade for guys that are going to be in the farm system. And that is an important element, especially because of the high payroll. The Dodgers don't have the high draft picks. Going out and making a trade with some of the pieces that you do have with the Gavin Lux to get a compensation pick is going to be important, because the Dodgers didn't have that before. And now they get to draft somebody with some of the best scouts in the entire game of baseball. Now they could go ahead, if they needed to, and trade one of these relievers for a guy that's at the lower levels of the minor league system, who is not Rule 5 eligible for a couple of years, because they can grow and develop him. And maybe he becomes another Jackson Ferris, another Dalton Rushing, or another one of these high leverage prospects, or guys that have made the major leagues. River Ryan came over in the trade with the Padres for Matt Beatty. They know how to make these types of trades, these type of moves. And because they have the financial flexibility to do that, and they have guys that other teams would trade a lot of pieces for and are affordable, they can go ahead and make these moves if they want to. It's a really good position that the Dodgers had. Comparing both that financial willpower with the organizational success that they've had in all aspects of the game allows you to make basically whatever move that you want to.
So kind of what I'm talking about here you're seeing the salary schedules for the Dodgers in 2025. So to go get all of these big contracts, you have to have guys on the other end to where if you need, so we talk about, hey, go get Sasaki, figure out the numbers later. Well, you can't do that if your entire roster is filled full of contracts that no other team would trade for, right? Because then nobody would trade for an Anthony Bonda, like they won't trade for a Chris Taylor. Then nobody would trade for a Ryan Brazier, like they won't trade for a Chris Taylor. So having contracts on the other end that are tradable, that are on your 26-man roster, is an equal part to being able to just the financial resources to being able to go get these guys. So Blake Snell signed till 2030, right? That's a contract that the Dodgers are going to reap the benefits for him. So would other teams take Blake Snell? We're going to look right here. Would they take his contract right here? Is there another team out there that would take Blake Snell if the Dodgers get spooked with this contract?
Well, in order for the Dodgers to want to trade at Blake Snell, that means things would have gone poorly, in which case they probably would not want to take that deal. There's other teams that could be, but the higher the value or the higher the dollar amount is, the shorter the smaller the pool is of teams that are going to be willing to go ahead and trade for that player. So the players that are under cheaper contracts that are getting a lot more of a bargain to go to, that's opening up the pool to teams like the Pirates or the Guardians or other teams that aren't willing to spend a whole lot of money. That might be out of Blake Snell's price range, but might be in the price range of a $1 million for an Anthony Bonda if they wanted to trade for him.
Right. So really, Blake Snell's the kind of not Blake Snell, Tyler Glass, now Mookie, Freddie, the superstar type guys. Those aren't the guys you would trade, anyways. At least off of a team that's looking to win a World Series. So Teo Hernandez, how many years did he sign for?
He signed a 3-year deal.
So not a big deal. It's not very long, right? Mm-hmm. Michael Conforto, how many years?
It was a 1-year deal.
Max Muncy, how long does he have?
He has 1 plus a club option next year.
So Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's one with a really long contract. Him, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. These are all the guys that you have to cover for with guys like Michael Conforto that you can get rid of if you need to, right? Mm-hmm. To make room for them. Okay, Chris Taylor, we said that's a bad one. Will Smith's another one. He signed a long contract. So every time that you sign a long contract like you did with Will Smith, you need a Michael Conforto. That gives you the flexibility of a 1-year signing to where because you can't remove Will Smith off your roster because nobody's taking that Will Smith contract right now. Nobody would trade for Will Smith in his contract at this point. So Will Smith is on your roster. So to say that, somebody else has to create flexibility if you need one spot on your 26. So Tommy Edman, okay, would people take Tommy Edman's making what? What does it say right here?
It's about $12.5 to $14 million per year for the next 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, so for 5 years for the Dodgers, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. So would you consider that to be a good contract?
Right now for the Dodgers makes a lot of sense, yes.
Yeah. Okay, Evan Phillips.
I think he's under a lot of these relievers are under arbitration. I think most of them have about 2 years left, so they'll be free agents after the 2026 season.
So 2 years and he's making $6 million a year. I mean, that's a bargain for the Dodgers, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
with what he's able to produce. Yeah.
Here's kind of what I'm trying to say. In free agency, if you went and got a reliever of the ilk of Evan Phillips, okay, you're going to have to sign him for a lot longer than 2 years and for a lot more than $6 million a year. Correct?
At least the average annual value is going to be a lot higher. Yes, absolutely.
Well, just look at Tanner Scott. I mean, he's wanting how much a year, right?
Yeah, it's close to $20 million a year, I think, is what he's probably looking at.
So having Evan Phillips at $6.1 million a year for 2 more years, I mean, the Dodgers are stealing this guy right now based on what the market value is for his type of high reliever, leverage reliever. Okay, Michael Kopech, $5.2 million. Michael Kopech, if he pitches the way that he's capable of, he's arbitration eligible in 3 years. Just looking at the capabilities that he's doing, $5.2 million. How much of an underpay is that?
Yeah, that with his potential, that is very much an underpayment because you have to remember a guy like Blake Trinan, who's 37 years old, pitched really well, got a 2-year, like $22 million deal. Kopech's a lot younger, a lot less innings under his belt, and has a lot of really high leverage stuff. I think he's going to be a free agent after the season, so it'll be interesting to see what happens for him.
Yeah. So going down the list here, here's a big question. We keep saying Ryan Brazier, and it may not be up to the Dodgers. So Ryan Brazier's making, and right here it says he's making $4.5 million a year. Would another team pay $4.5 million for Ryan Brazier in a trade?
It's a good question, and it depends on what their room in the bullpen is and how they value Ryan Brazier, who is getting old, and that's one of the risks of signing relievers to multi-year deals. Yeah.
Brusdar Graterol injured, but only $2.8 million. Alex Vesia, $2.2 million. Every single team in the major leagues would kill to have that. Would kill to have Alex Vesia for $2.2 million. Dustin May, I promise you, every major league club in Major League Baseball, even with his injured past, would love to take a chance on Dustin May for $2.1 million. Okay, Anthony Bonda, $1 million. This might be the best contract in baseball. $1 million for Anthony Bonda. Every single team in Major League Baseball would love to sign Anthony Bonda for $1 million. So I think Bonda, May, Vesia, that's 3. Brazier, I think, is kind of questionable. Kopech is 4. There's at least 3. You don't want to trade Kopech, but that's at least 3 guys right there that other teams would kill to acquire in a trade. So I bring that full circle back to say the Dodgers have created their flexibility by having such great contracts on the margins with guys on the margins like Tommy Edman, like Anthony Bonda, like even the Evan Phillips is kind of like an Alex Vestia type contract on the margins. They've created their flexibility, and when we say the Dodgers are great on the margins, this is where it becomes so valuable because this is where it gives them the flexibility to go and move an Alex Vestia or an Anthony Bonda if they need to make room for a Tanner Scott because they have been so smart signing the right contracts with the margin players.
Yeah, and I look at some of the differences, and this is not meant to poke fun of another organization, although I think we like to poke fun a little bit of the Padres. But you look at the depth of the Dodgers, which I think these teams are slightly similar in the fact that they go out and they pay a lot of superstar quality players. The Dodgers go out and pay for superstar quality players. The Padres have a lot of players that produce really well, that are high quality players. What I think separates the two teams, at least right now, which this could change through the course of free agency, is just looking at their rosters on paper. I like the Dodgers' depth a lot better than I like the Padres' depth because I think the Dodgers are a little bit better and more attentive to the details surrounding a lot of the other guys on the roster and being able to help develop them. I really like what the Dodgers are able to do. And you mentioned all of those different guys that are bargains. That doesn't even mention the guys that are pre-arbitration, that are being paid the league minimum, like Edgardo Henriquez, who we don't know what his role is going to be during this upcoming season. That has a whole lot of potential. Or Bobby Miller. A lot of other teams would pay
$800,000 for Bobby Miller.
Yeah, a lot of other
get the
teams
hell out of here.
And not just $800,000. That also comes with 4 years or 5 years of team control that he gets to be part of them. So there's a lot of value contracts that are part of the Dodgers that make going after and get, because those guys are really talented and can help fill out the roster, that gives you the ability to go out and get the superstar players and not spread out the money resources to go get a whole bunch of free agents. Go out and get the free agents that you love. Go out and get the superstar free agents, and then you can add a couple of additional pieces as well and fill out the roster however else you want to fill out because your depth's really good. And I really like what the Dodgers' depth is, and I think they've done a really good job of developing these guys to get them to the point where they can be really solid pieces to add to where not every single player is a free agent signing. Yes, there are a lot of free agent signings that the Dodgers get, but they also supplement their roster really well with some other pieces.
Yeah. So let me click this back here and then let me go ahead and zoom that in because I wanted to really kind of hone in on this. So here's 4 spots here beyond just signing Roki Sasaki. So the Dodgers have figured out a way to create a 6-man rotation, which is huge whenever you talk about all the injuries the Dodgers have had. So I know they've had the quasi 6-man with the up-down and the 60-day IL, all that kind of stuff, or the 15-day IL manipulation, whatever. But they have a legitimate 6-man. They can do that because of Shohei Ohtani. So they've been able to create a 6-man rotation. They've been able to create the best roster in baseball unequivocally, okay? All at the same time, they've created a 6-man rotation, the best roster in the game of baseball. They have the best contracts for their superstars, okay? Shohei Ohtani was free money last year. He deferred all of his money, okay? Same with TeoscarHernandez, was on a very good contract, okay? Nobody's complaining about Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman was a steal, okay? So they've created a 6-man rotation, best roster in baseball, best contracts for their all-stars. They've created the most flexibility in their contracts with their margin players like Alex Vestia, Anthony Bonda, and guys like that. And meanwhile, they've also been able to keep their entire farm system intact for the most part.
Yeah, no.
I mean, what the hell? I mean, these guys, I don't even know how these guys the front office did this, man. This is, I mean, it's beyond playing. I don't know. This is like playing chess from space or something.
Chess from space. Yeah.
I don't know. I just made something up.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where earlier this week, there were some serious rumors that the Dodgers were looking at perhaps a Josue De Paula, looking to trade him for international signing bonus money to go ahead and sign a Roki Sasaki. And while Dylan Campbell, incredible player, just two different types of players that the Dodgers could have traded in order to go and get some international bonus pool money. So they traded a Dylan Campbell. DC is headed out to Philadelphia, and they were still able to get Roki Sasaki with all of these different elements added in, while still adding some really talented pieces to be part of the farm system throughout the course of the offseason, to continuing to sign the right players to free agent contracts. It's just amazing to watch. And the only thing that is holding this team back is, on paper right now, the potential flexibility on the roster, being able to send guys up and down to keep these guys as healthy as possible. But that's a problem that the Dodgers can fix with a couple of moves, or a move or two, in which case they have some additional roster flexibility of what they're able to do. Right now, it's a very good state, and the Dodgers seem to be pushing all the right buttons, which is making a lot of other fan bases angry and upset, because the Dodgers are seemingly making a lot of the moves. But this is because of the foundation that they've built up, that they built an organization that's not afraid to spend and go out and get paid, go ahead and pay a lot of big contracts for players. But they've also built the correct organization in order to attract players to where even the money part, even having the most money, isn't the sole determining factor.
No.
There's other factors that the Dodgers excel in, and that is why they're getting a lot of the top line free agents players, including a Roki Sasaki, who is going to be a Los Angeles Dodger and who's going to be pitching a lot in LA this upcoming season. I couldn't be more excited about it.
So I'm going to get back to this one more time. 6-man rotation, check. Best roster in baseball, check. Kept your farm system in check, check. Flexibility with your margin contracts. So if you needed to trade a couple of them to make room for another superstar, check. We talked about that with Vesia and Bonda. Okay. Let me add one more. With the trade today of Dylan Campbell, DC, of which we love. Okay, we love DC. The Phillies are going to love him. I think we would also probably admit they don't have any room for Dylan Campbell. Dylan Campbell played high level at Texas. He's going to be ready to be a major leaguer maybe by the end of this year. In another organization, not with the Dodgers.
Yes.
But that's how advanced this guy is. Okay, so the Dodgers did not have a path for him. No, so, yes, they're losing a guy in the sense that he's losing a good player, but they're not losing somebody that would ever help their organization, because they just didn't have a path for him. Yeah, so by trading him, I'm sorry, go ahead, Austin.
No, go ahead.
So by trading him, they also got their international pool money back, and now they're going to be able to sign their international players as well.
Yeah.
So they figured out a way literally to figure out every single situation on the plus side. Like I said, it's amazing. We have another VIN 1988 super chat before we get to your thought. $5, just our daily reminder from my favorite handle on social media, how bad the Giants suck. Their nickname is the Hoover Vacuums, because they suck as much as we do, right? Okay, the Dodgers front office, too, from Vin. We have another super chat. $5. The Dodgers front office is playing chess while all the others are playing checkers. I'm going to go ahead and say it again. Maybe I made up something that, of course, Oklahoma City is the Comet, so why not use the space theme, right? Okay, the Dodgers aren't just playing chess. They're playing chess in space. I don't know what the hell that means, but that sounds like it's really good.
It sounds pretty cool. We'll just put it out there. One of the things I was just going to mention with DC is they've actually made a couple of signings, minor league signings, that have added some players in the system. The Rule 5 acquisition in the minor league phase of a guy like a John Rhodes. They made a free agent signing, Ezekiel Pagan, who is part of the Chicago Cubs system. Spent a lot of time in South Bend. There are some times that did not work out well for the Loons with Ezekiel Pagana, if it's a player that I'm thinking of. So he's another one of these outfield additions that's part of the system. Justin Dean was a free agent. So there's a lot of guys at the upper levels of the minor league system that have been outfielders that have added into this organization. So it leaves questions as far as what you're going to do in order to create roster spots for all of these different guys. So trading a guy like a Dylan Campbell, incredibly talented, and I think would be worthy of a starting outfield spot at some point in the minor leagues, and could be big league ready towards the end of the season.
Yes.
Even with the minor league roster looking right now, with other guys like Chris Newell or Jose Ramos, if you want to keep him up, or if you wanted to have a Josue De Paula start the season in Tulsa, or DK, Ryan Ward, Bubba Eileen, James Outman, and Andy Pages if they start the season at the minor league level. DK, Damon Keith, absolutely. All of these guys.
Austin Gauthier played. How about Dalton Rushing? He played left field last year. Right?
You start to see a lot of different outfielders, and it starts to get really crowded. So I think providing an opportunity for Dylan Campbell, I think, was a good thing. And now they have a lot of different guys that are going to be fighting for different opportunities and roster spots, and so that clears up a little bit of that avenue as well as providing additional opportunity. And if it was just Dylan Campbell that was holding the Dodgers back from signing Roki Sasaki, you got to do what's best for the organization and probably what's best for Dylan Campbell, DC, and actually involve him as part of a trade. So interesting to see the inner workings, and it'll be fascinating to see how these new guys are able to do, as well as the old guys coming up into the Dodger system.
Yeah, and you know how we are. We always celebrate one of these guys get traded. Not that we don't want to see him in Dodgers uniform. We'd prefer that, but here's the pecking order, okay? We get to see we've got to see Ben Kasparius and Landon Knack and Ryan Pepio in the past, and Michael Grove and Andy Pages and James Outman and all these guys, and Hunter Fiducia. So pecking order number one, obviously, is we get to see these guys make the major leagues with the Dodgers.
Yes.
That is easily by far best case number one scenario. There is no close second place. But here's where we differ from the average fan. Pecking order for us, number two, is that these players get to make a major league team somewhere else. We would rather these players be in the major league somewhere else than be in AAA for the Dodgers as depth. That is pecking order number two. That is number two thing that makes me the happiest. So when a guy like a Jordan Leisure gets traded to the White Sox, and we know because of that Nick Nastrini, we know because of that they're going to now become a major leaguer where they would not have with the Dodgers, that is a celebration for us. Yeah. So we are celebrating for Dylan Campbell because now he is going to have the opportunity and path that he deserves to have the chance. All you ask for these guys is to give them a chance to have the chance to become a major leaguer. That's pecking order number three. And then pecking order number three would be kind of the purgatory, and it's a distant third. What we don't want is the purgatory that Ryan Ward has been stuck in, the purgatory that Drew Avens is in, Cody Hosey, Hunter Fiducia, even for that matter. That's the purgatory that's the only downside to any of this for us. So that's kind of the pecking order for us. So, hey, this has been a lot of fun. And by the way, we have a rumor here in the chat that the Padres are going to become the Dodgers AAA team. Final thoughts.
It's going to be a little bit of a long drive for you to get to the AAA games there, Casey. Not being there in Oklahoma, but I mean, you'll take it.
Yeah. Final thoughts, man. It's been a lot of fun. It's had an awesome crowd again.
Oh, yeah. No, the crowd has been amazing. I can't thank you guys enough for the super chats and for the people that have just commented. We try to get to as many comments as we possibly can, but we also have a lot of things that we'd like to say about the Dodgers, especially when they make a move like Roki Sasaki. This is perhaps the best bargain in recent years during free agency if he lives up to the hype that everyone has about Roki Sasaki. It's exciting because it's another one of these potential ace-level pitchers or future ace level pitchers for the Dodgers, and he's going to be on the Dodgers for several years, and he's, because of his contract, is going to allow them to make additional signings, additional moves to make this roster as good as possible. I'm happy for DC. I'm sad that I won't be able to see him, even though I wasn't going to see him during this next season because he wasn't going to repeat at Great Lakes in all likelihood. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do for the Phillies and as part of their organization. I know there's a couple of players, former Dodgers affiliate players that have moved on to the Phillies organization. So wish him nothing but the best, but couldn't be more excited about Roki Sasaki and what he could do for the Dodgers. We're getting very close to Dodgers baseball, and this roster on paper is looking phenomenal. And I think this team has a really good shot of repeating as World Series champs.
I'm going to say this again. Hey, it's exciting getting Sasaki. It's exciting getting Blake Snell and Glasnow and all these free agent signings. that's super exciting. But for me, for somebody who has my entire life had to put together rosters and had to create entire systems of players and a system that wouldn't just be a good team for 1 year, like you're building a program to make it where it can reload and not rebuild. That's been my entire career in the coaching career, is trying to figure out all of those margin areas to where you can be good every year and not just be good 1 year and then suck for 3 years, one good year, suck for that kind of deal. So that's kind of why my brain goes here. But again, this is a day of celebration. And again, I'm going to say it not just because it's Roki Sasaki, but because it's another situation to where the Dodgers figured out how to play chess again and how to put the Dodgers, not just with the talent that Sasaki brought to the organization, but also with the structure and the flexibility they created for this organization. Because of this signing today, this organization is several steps closer to winning multiple championships than it was this time yesterday. And with that, I would like to say it is a great day to